Okay, so are you ready to get a little creepy?
Always.
Today we are diving into Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart.
Classic.
Yeah, and we're going to try to figure out what makes this story so bone-chillingly good. Even after over a century and a half later? I mean, Poe, he's obviously the master of the macabre, right? But The Telltale Heart, it hits differently.
Oh, absolutely. And the Bookish Bites podcast, I think they had some great points about why this story is so enduring. And one of the things that they brought up that I think is really interesting is the whole idea of the unreliable narrator.
Right. Right away, we're like, wait, is he nuts or what?
Yeah, and that's what Poe does so brilliantly. He drops us right into the mind of this narrator, and we're forced to question everything he says. Like, are we supposed to believe him? Is he actually mad? Or is he trying to convince us that he's sane?
I think that's one of the biggest mysteries of the whole story. You never really know for sure.
It definitely keeps you guessing. And you brought up a good point earlier about how this story just kind of gets under your skin. And for me, a lot of that has to do with the narrator's obsession with the old man's eye, that vulture eye.
Oh yeah, that creepy eye.
It's such a specific detail, and it's repeated over and over again, so you know it's got to be important.
Totally.
Right.
But what do you think it symbolizes?
Well, there are lots of different interpretations. Some people see it as a symbol of guilt, like the narrator's own guilt is staring back at him.
Oh, that makes sense.
Others see it as a representation of the old man's power or authority, like the narrator's fixated on this one thing that makes him feel inferior.
I like that. And it kind of makes the whole murder even more disturbing.
Right, because here's this guy who's clearly obsessed with this eye to the point where he's willing to kill to get rid of it.
And it's not like a crime of passion or anything. It's so meticulously planned.
Oh, yeah. He's stalking the old man every night for a week.
Yeah.
He even talks about how carefully he opens the lantern.
Yeah, I undid the lantern
Oh.
cautiously.
Oh.
So cautiously. It's like every detail is thought out in advance, which is really
Yeah.
creepy when you think about it.
Totally. It adds to that whole sense of unease. And then, of course, we have the beating heart. The sound that drives the narrator to confess. Is it real or just in his head?
Yeah, I mean, is the heart actually beating that loud, or is it the sound of his own guilt driving him crazy?
Well, Poe never explicitly tells us, so it's up to the reader to decide.
And I think that's part of what makes it so effective. It's like the story gets under your skin and makes you question your own sanity a little bit.
For sure. In the Bookish Bites podcast, they pointed out that the sound of the beating heart, it isn't just a plot device. It's a really powerful symbol. It represents the narrator's guilt and paranoia.
Oh, and it also creates this incredible suspense.
Yeah.
Like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop the whole time.
Yeah, and Poe is a master of atmosphere. I mean, the way he describes the setting, the darkness, the suffocating silence, you can practically feel the tension building.
Yeah, it's like he's trapping us in that room with the narrator. Like, remember that line? It grew louder, louder, louder. Chills every time.
And the way Poe uses sensory details to create that atmosphere, like we're talking about the sound of the heartbeat, but he also talks about the smell of the old man's room, the darkness that's so thick you can almost taste it.
Yeah, it's like we're right there experiencing it all alongside the narrator.
And I think it's important to remember that the setting isn't just some random backdrop. It's actually a reflection of the narrator's internal state. As his sanity unravels, the room becomes more and more oppressive.
Oh, absolutely. That's what makes it so much more than just a horror story. It's a psychological thriller that really explores the dark side of human nature.
Yeah, and it makes you think about some pretty big questions, right? Like the nature of guilt, the power of the mind to deceive itself, the limits of human perception.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Poe doesn't give us any easy answers. He leaves it up to us to grapple with these ideas, which I think is what makes it such a great story for discussion. It's one of those stories that you can read over and over again and always find something new to think about.
And I think it's a testament to Poe's genius that he can pack so much depth and complexity into such a short story.
Totally. Well, we've only scratched the surface here, but hopefully this deep dive is giving you a little more to chew on.
There's always more to discover.
And I think something to ponder is this. Would the story be different if we knew for sure that the narrator was insane? What if he truly believed everything he was saying? Would that make him more sympathetic? More terrifying? Something to think about? Until next time, keep exploring the dark side of literature.
And keep listening.
We'll be back with more deep dives soon.